Every night while you're asleep, your heart doesn't get a break. It keeps beating, keeps pumping, keeps regulating your blood pressure, and for most of us over 60, we've spent decades thinking about heart health purely in terms of what we eat and how much we move during the day, while completely overlooking the 8 or 9 hours we spend in bed. But your evening routine, the habits you repeat almost without thinking every single night, can either support your heart's overnight recovery or quietly work against it, and most people have never connected the dots. In this video, I'm going to walk you through 8 common bedtime habits that could be placing unnecessary strain on your heart, often without a single obvious symptom to warn you. By the end, you'll have a clear, practical picture of what a genuinely heart-friendly evening actually looks like. If you find value in this kind of practical, doctor-informed health guidance, go ahead and subscribe to Longevity Insight right now, because we release videos exactly like this every week, built specifically to help you protect the parts of your health that are easy to overlook. Before we dive into the list, it's worth understanding why nighttime matters so much for your heart in the first place. During healthy sleep, particularly deep sleep, your blood pressure and heart rate naturally drop, giving your cardiovascular system a genuine period of rest and recovery, sometimes called nocturnal dipping. This nightly dip is protective, and research has consistently linked a healthy overnight blood pressure pattern with better long-term cardiovascular outcomes. When sleep is disrupted, shortened, or poor in quality, this protective dip can be blunted, meaning your heart and blood vessels spend more of the night working under a level of strain they were designed to rest from. This single mechanism helps explain why so many of tonight's 8 habits connect back to heart health in ways that aren't immediately obvious. The first habit is eating heavy, large, or rich meals late at night, particularly within a couple of hours of bedtime. Digestion requires a genuine increase in blood flow directed towards your digestive system, and a large meal shortly before lying down asks your cardiovascular system to manage that digestive demand at the exact same time it should be winding down for rest. This can also disrupt sleep quality directly, through discomfort, acid reflux, or simply feeling too full to settle comfortably. And as we've discussed in previous videos, poor sleep quality itself is independently linked to less favorable blood pressure patterns over time. A heart-friendlier approach involves finishing your last substantial meal at least a couple of hours before bed, and if you do want something light in the evening, keeping it small and easily digestible. The second habit is poor sleep quality overall, meaning sleep that's frequently interrupted, unusually light, or simply doesn't leave you feeling rested, regardless of the specific cause behind it. We touched on this above, but it deserves its own mention because of how directly it connects to cardiovascular health. Consistently, poor sleep has been associated with higher blood pressure, increased inflammation throughout the body, and greater long-term cardiovascular risk. This is exactly why addressing sleep quality isn't simply about feeling more energetic during the day, though that matters too, but genuinely about protecting your heart during the hours when it should be getting its most meaningful rest. The third habit is going to bed dehydrated, or simply not drinking enough water throughout the day leading up to bedtime. When your body is dehydrated, your blood volume decreases slightly, which can cause your heart to work a bit harder to circulate blood effectively, and it can also affect how well your blood pressure regulates itself overnight. Many older adults, as we've discussed before, have a somewhat blunted thirst signal, meaning it's entirely possible to be mildly dehydrated without ever feeling particularly thirsty. Making a habit of staying consistently hydrated throughout the day, rather than only when you notice thirst, supports healthier overnight circulation, though it's worth balancing this with not drinking excessive fluids in the hour or so directly before bed, simply to avoid multiple trips to the bathroom disrupting your sleep. The fourth habit is excessive alcohol consumption in the evening. This one surprises people because alcohol often feels relaxing and is frequently associated with helping people fall asleep faster. But alcohol's actual effect on sleep and heart health is considerably more complicated than that initial relaxed feeling suggests. Alcohol tends to fragment sleep later in the night, reducing the amount of deep restorative sleep you experience, and it can also cause a temporary rise in heart rate and blood pressure as your body processes it overnight. For some people, alcohol close to bedtime has also been associated with an increased likelihood of irregular heart rhythms during sleep. None of this means an occasional drink is dangerous, but relying on alcohol as a nightly sleep aid or having several drinks in the evening on a regular basis works against exactly the kind of restorative, heart-protective sleep we're aiming for. The fifth habit is excessive screen time in the hour or two before bed, whether that's scrolling on a phone, watching television, or working on a tablet. The bright light from screens suppresses melatonin production, the hormone your body relies on to transition smoothly into sleep, which can delay how quickly you fall asleep and reduce overall sleep quality. Beyond the light itself, the content we consume on screens in the evening, whether it's stressful news, work emails, or simply mentally stimulating content, can keep your nervous system more activated than it should be heading into bedtime, and that heightened activation translates into elevated heart rate and blood pressure at a time when both should be winding down. The sixth habit is carrying unmanaged stress into bed with you, essentially lying down each night while your mind continues cycling through worries, to-do lists, or unresolved frustrations from the day. Chronic evening stress keeps cortisol and other stress hormones elevated, which directly affects heart rate and blood pressure. And this pattern, repeated night after night, contributes to the kind of ongoing cardiovascular strain that adds up meaningfully over months and years. This connects closely to the broader concept of chronic stress we've discussed in other videos. But it deserves specific attention here because bedtime is often when unprocessed daily stress becomes most noticeable, precisely because it's one of the few quiet moments where there's nothing left to distract from it. The seventh habit is maintaining an irregular sleep schedule, going to bed and waking up at dramatically different times from one night to the next. Your cardiovascular system, like the rest of your body, relies heavily on a consistent internal clock, and irregular sleep timing has been associated with less favorable blood pressure patterns and increased cardiovascular risk markers compared to a consistent schedule, even when total sleep duration is fairly similar. This is exactly why sleep consistency, not just sleep quantity, deserves genuine attention as part of a heart-healthy routine. The eighth and final habit is skipping or forgetting prescribed evening medications, particularly blood pressure or heart medications intended to be taken at night. Some blood pressure medications are specifically timed for evening use because they're designed to support that protective overnight blood pressure dip we discussed earlier, and inconsistent use can directly undermine the medication's intended effect. Life gets busy, routines get disrupted, and evening medications are often the easiest ones to accidentally forget, especially compared to morning medications that tend to be built more firmly into daily routine. Setting a consistent reminder, whether that's a pill box, a phone alarm, or simply keeping medication next to something else you reliably do every night, like brushing your teeth, can meaningfully improve consistency here. Now let's talk about what an actual heart-friendly evening routine looks like. Because pulling these 8 insights together into practical habits is really the whole point of this video. Start by aiming to finish your last substantial meal at least 2 to 3 hours before bed, keeping anything eaten closer to bedtime light and easy to digest. Stay consistently hydrated throughout the day, tapering off somewhat in the final hour before bed. If you drink alcohol, consider limiting it earlier in the evening rather than as a nightcap, and pay attention to how it genuinely affects your own sleep quality, since this varies from person to person. Set a screen curfew of 30 to 60 minutes before bed if at all possible, replacing that time with something calming, reading, light stretching, or simply sitting quietly. Build in a brief wind-down practice for managing the day's stress before you lie down, whether that's writing down tomorrow's to-do list so your mind doesn't have to hold on to it, some slow breathing exercises, or a few minutes of quiet reflection. Keep your sleep and wake times as consistent as possible, even on weekends, since your cardiovascular system benefits from that predictability just as much as your energy levels do. And create a simple, reliable system for evening medications, so taking them becomes automatic rather than something you have to remember. I also want to spend a moment on nighttime symptoms that should never simply be brushed off, because this matters for your safety. Chest discomfort that wakes you from sleep, whether it feels like pressure, tightness, or squeezing, should always be taken seriously and evaluated promptly, since this can be a sign of reduced blood flow to the heart. Shortness of breath that occurs specifically when lying down, or that wakes you gasping for air, can be a sign of fluid buildup related to heart function and deserves a prompt conversation with your doctor. Frequent waking throughout the night, particularly if a partner has noticed loud snoring, gasping, or pauses in breathing, may point towards sleep apnea, a condition we discussed in a previous video that carries its own significant cardiovascular implications when left unaddressed. A racing or noticeably irregular heartbeat that wakes you up, especially if it happens repeatedly, is also worth reporting to your doctor rather than assuming it's simply stress or too much caffeine earlier in the day. None of these symptoms should cause panic on their own, since many have straightforward, manageable explanations, but they absolutely deserve a genuine conversation with a healthcare professional rather than being quietly tolerated night after night. I think what makes this topic so worth talking about is simply how overlooked it is. We spend so much energy thinking about our next meal, our next walk, our next checkup, and almost none thinking about the 8 hours we spend lying in bed, even though that time represents roughly a third of our entire life and plays a genuinely important role in how well our heart functions the other 2/3. The habits we've covered today aren't dramatic or difficult to understand. They're small, ordinary choices, repeated every single night, that quietly add up into either meaningful protection or unnecessary strain over the years. If this video gave you something practical to think about tonight, I'd love to hear from you. So leave a comment below and let me know which of these 8 habits you're planning to work on first. This community learns so much from hearing what's actually helping other people, and your comment might be exactly what encourages someone else to finally rethink their evening routine. And if you know someone who could benefit from this, a parent, a spouse, a friend who's mentioned trouble sleeping or simply never thought about their bedtime habits this way, please take a moment to share this video with them. It's a small gesture that could genuinely support their long-term heart health. Before you go, here's what I want you to remember. Your heart works for you every single hour of every single day, including the hours you spend asleep, and the habits you carry into bed each night genuinely matter to how well it can rest and recover. Small, consistent changes to your evening routine, nothing dramatic, nothing extreme, can add up into real, lasting support for your cardiovascular health in the years ahead. If you found this video helpful, make sure you're subscribed to Longevity Insight and turn on notifications so you never miss the practical health guidance we share here every week. Thank you for spending this time with me today. Sleep well tonight, and I'll see you in the next video.